The Quest of Iranon by H.P. Lovecraft. It's that time to listen to another tale. A tale about work, and how sometimes that just leads to more work, but not in the way you think. So sit back, relax, clear your mind, and enjoy. Into the granite city of Teloth wandered the youth, vine-crowned, his yellow hair glistening with myrrh, and his purple robe torn with briars of the mountain Sidrak that lies across the antique bridge of stone. The men of Teloth are dark and stern, and dwell in square houses, and with frowns they ask the stranger whence he had come, and what were his name and fortune. So the youth answered, I am Ironon, and I come from Era, a far city that I recall only dimly, but seek to find again. I am a singer of songs that I learned in the far city, and my calling is to make beauty with the things remembered of childhood. My wealth is in little memories and dreams, and in hopes that I sing in gardens when the moon is tender, and the west wind stirs the lotus buds. When the men of Teloth heard these things, they whispered to one another, for though in the granite city there is no laughter or song, the stern men sometimes look to the Carthian hills in the spring and think of the lutes of distant Onai, whereof travelers have told. And thinking thus, they bade the strangers stay and sing in the square before the tower of Mlin, though they liked not the color of his tattered robe, nor the myrrh in his hair, nor his chaplet of vine leaves, nor the youth in his golden voice. At evening, Ironon sang, and while he sang, an old man prayed, and a blind man said he saw a nimbus over the singer's head. But most of the men of Teloth yawned, and some laughed, and some went away to sleep. For Ironon told nothing useful, singing only his memories, his dreams, and his hopes. I remember the twilight, the moon, and soft songs, and the window where I was rocked to sleep, and through the window was the street where the golden lights came, and where the shadows danced on houses of marble. I remember the square of moonlight on the floor, that was not like any other light, and the visions that danced in the moonbeams when my mother sang to me. And too, I remember the sun of morning, bright above the many-colored hills in summer, and the sweetness of the flowers born in the south wind that made the trees sing. O Era, city of marble and beryl, how many are thy beauties! How loved I the warm and fragrant groves across the high-line Nira, and the falls of the tiny Craw that flowed through the verdant valley. In those groves and in that vale the children wove wreaths for one another, and at dusk I dreamed strange dreams under the yoth trees on the mountains, as I saw below me the lights of the city and the curving Nithra reflecting a ribbon of stars. And in the city were places of veined and tinted marble, with golden domes and painted walls, and green gardens and cerulean pools of crystal fountains. Often I played in the gardens and waded in the pools, and lay and dreamed among the pale flowers under the trees. And sometimes at sunset I would climb the long hilly street to the citadel and the open place, and look down upon Era, the magic city of marble and beryl, splendid in a robe of golden flame. Long have I missed thee, Era, for I was but young when we went into exile, but my father was thy king, and I shall come again to thee. For it is so decreed of fate, all through 7 lands have I sought thee, and some day I shall reign over thy groves and gardens, thy streets and palaces, and sing to men who shall know whereof I sing, and laugh not nor turn away. For I am Ironon, who was a prince in Era. That night the men of Teloth lodged the stranger in a stable, and in the morning an archon came to him and told him to go to the shop of Athok, the cobbler, and be apprenticed to him. But I am Ironon, a singer of songs, he said, and have no heart for the cobbler's trade. All in Teloth must toil, replied the urchin, for that is the law. Then said Ironon, wherefore do ye toil? Is it not that ye may live and be happy? And if ye toil only, that ye may toil more? When shall happiness find you? Ye toil to live, but is not life made of beauty and song? And if ye suffer no singers among you, where shall be the fruits of your toil? Toil without song is like a weary journey without an end. Were not death more pleasing? But the urchin was sullen and did not understand, and rebuked the stranger. Thou art a strange youth, and I like not thy face nor thy voice. The words thou speakest are blasphemy, for the gods of Teloth have said that toil is good. Our gods have promised us a haven of light beyond death, where there shall be rest without end, and crystal coldness the mists, which none shall vex his mind with thought or his eyes with beauty. Go thou then to Athok the cobbler, or be gone out of this city by sunset. All here must serve, and song is folly. So Ironon went out of the stable and walked over the narrow stone streets, between the gloomy square houses of granite, seeking something green in the air of spring. But in Teloth was nothing green, for all was of stone. On the faces of men were frowns, but by the stone embankment along the sluggish river Zuro stayed a young boy with sad eyes gazing into the waters to spy green budding branches washed down from the hills by the freshets. And the boy said to him, Art thou not indeed he of whom the urchins tell, who seekest a far city in a fair land? I am Ramond, and born of the blood of Teloth, but am not old in the ways of the granite city, and yearn daily for the warm groves and the distant lands of beauty and song. Beyond the Carthian hills lieth Onai, the city of lutes and dancing, which men whisper of, and say is both lovely and terrible. Thither would I go were I old enough to find the way, and thither shouldest thou go, and thou wouldest sing, and have men listen to thee. Let us leave the city Teloth, and fare together among the hills of spring. Thou shalt show me the ways of travel, and I will attend thy songs at evening, when the stars one by one bring dreams to the minds of dreamers. And peradventure, it may be that Onai, the city of lutes and dancing, is even the fair era thou seekest. For it is told that thou hast not known era since old days, and a name often changeth. Let us go to Onai, O Ironon of the golden head, where men shall know our longings and welcome us as brothers, nor ever laugh or frown at what we say. And Ironon answered, Be it so, small one. If any in this stone place yearn for beauty, he must seek the mountains and beyond. And I would not leave thee to pine by the sluggish Zuro. But think not that delight and understanding dwell just across the Carthian hills, or in any spot thou canst find in a day's, or a year's, or a lustrum's journey. Behold, when I was small like thee, I dwelt in the valley of Narthos by the frigid Zerai, where none would listen to my dreams, and I told myself that when older, I would go to Sonara on the southern slope, and sing to smiling dromedary men in the marketplace. But when I went to Sonara, I found the dromedary men all drunken and ribald, and saw that their songs were not as mine. So I traveled in a barge down to Zerai to onyx-walled Jarin, and the soldiers at Jarin laughed at me and drave me out, so that I wandered to many other cities. I have seen Stethilos, that is below the great cataract, and have gazed on the marsh where Sarnath once stood. I have been to Thra, Alarnek, and Catatheron, and the winding river Ai, and have dwelt long in Olatho, in the land of Lamar. But though I have had listeners sometimes, They have ever been few, and I know that welcome shall await me only in Era, the city of marble and beryl, where my father once ruled as king. So for Era shall we seek, though it were well to visit distant and loot-blessed Onai across the Carthian hills, which may indeed be Era, though I think not. Era's beauty is past imagining, and none can tell of it without rapture, whilst of Onai the camel-drivers whisper leeringly. At sunset, Ironon and the small Rumnad went forth from Teloth, and long wandered amidst the green hills and cool forests. The way was rough and obscure, and never did they seem nearer to Onai, the city of lutes and dancing. But in the dusk, as the stars came out, Ironon would sing of Era and its beauties, and Rumnad would listen, so that they were both happy after a fashion. They ate plentiful of fruit and red berries, and marked not the passing of time. But many years must have slipped away. Small Rumnad was now not so small, and spoke deeply instead of shrilly, though Ironon was always the same, and decked his golden hair with vines and fragrant resins found in the woods. So it came to pass, one day, that Rumnad seemed older than Ironon, though he had been very small, when Ironon had found him watching for green budding branches in Teloth besides the sluggish stone-banked Zuro. Then one night, when the moon was full and the travelers came to a mountain crest, and looked down upon the myriad lights of Onai, peasants had told them they were near, and Ironon knew that this was not his native city of Era. The lights of Onai were not like those of Era, for they were harsh and glaring, while the lights of Era shine as softly and magically as shone the moonlight on the floor by the window where Ironon's mother once rocked him to sleep with song. But Onai was a city of lutes and dancing, so Ironon and Rumnad went down the steep slope that they might find men to whom songs and dreams would bring pleasure. And when they were come into the town, they found rose-wreathed revelers bound from house to house, and leaning from windows and balconies, who listened to the songs of Ironon, and tossed him flowers and applauded when he was done. Then for a moment did Ironon believe he had found those who thought and felt even as he, though the town was not an hundredth as fair as Era. When dawn came, Ironon looked about with dismay, for the domes of Onai were not golden in the sun, but gray and dismal, and the men of Onai were pale, with reveling, and dull with wine, and unlike the radiant men of Era. But because the people had thrown him blossoms and acclaimed his songs, Ironon stayed on, and with him Rumnad, who liked the revelry of the town, and wore in his dark hair roses and myrtle. Often at night Ironon sang to the revelers, but he was always as before, crowned only with the vine of the mountains, and remembering the marble streets of Era, and the hyaline Nithra. In the frescoed halls of the monarch did he sing, upon a crystal dais raised over a floor that was a mirror, and as he sang, he brought pictures to his hearers till the floor seemed to reflect old, beautiful, and half-remembered things, instead of the wine-reddened feasters who pelted him with roses, and the king bade him put away his tattered purple, and clothed him in satin and cloth of gold, with rings of green jade and bracelets of tinted ivory, and lodged him in a gilded and tapestried chamber, on a bed of sweet carven wood, with canopies and coverlets of flowered embroidered silk. Thus dwelt Ironon in Onai, the city of lutes and dancing. It is not known how long Ironon tarried in Onai, but one day the king brought to the palace some wild, whirling dancers from the Lyronian desert, and dusky flute players from the Drinan in the east, And after that the revelers threw their roses not so much at Ironon as at the dancers and the flute players. And day by day that Rumnad, who had been a small boy in granite Teloth, grew coarser and redder with wine, till he dreamed less and less, and listened with less delight to the songs of Ironon. But though Ironon was sad, he ceased not to sing, and at evening told again his dreams of Era, the city of marble and beryl. Then one night the red and fattened Rumnad snorted heavily and missed the poppied silks of the banquet couch and died writhing, whilst Ironon, pale and slender, sang to himself in a far corner. And when Ironon had wept over the grave of Rumnad and strewn it with green budding branches, such as Rumnad used to love, he put aside his silks and gauds, and went forgotten out of Onai, the city of lutes and dancing, clad only in the ragged purple in which he had come, and garlanded with fresh vines from the mountains. Into the sunset wandered Ironon, seeking still for his native land, and for men who would understand and cherish his songs and dreams. In all the cities of Cytathria, and in the lands beyond the Nazic desert, gay-faced children laughed at his olden songs and tattered robe of purple. But Ironon stayed ever young, and wore wreaths upon his golden head, whilst he sang of Era, delight of the past and hope of the future. So came he one night to the squalid cot of an antique shepherd, bent and dirty, who kept lean flocks on a stony slope above a quicksand marsh. To this man Ironon spoke, as to so many others. Canst thou tell me where I may find Era, the city of marble and beryl, where flows the hyaline Nithra, and where the falls of the tiny cross sing to verdant valleys and hills forested with yath trees? And the shepherd, hearing, looked long and strangely at Ironon, as if recalling something very far away in time, and noted each line of the stranger's face, and his golden hair, and his crown of vine leaves. But he was old, and shook his head as he replied, "O stranger, I have indeed heard of the name Era, and the other names thou hast spoken, but they come to me from afar down the waste of long years. I heard them in my youth from the lips of a playmate, a beggar's boy given to strange dreams, who would weave long tales about the moon and the flowers and the west wind. We used to laugh at him, for we knew him from his birth, he thought himself a king's son. He was comely, even as thou, but full of folly and strangeness, and he ran away when small to find those who would listen gladly to his songs and dreams. How often hath he sung to me of lands that never were, and things that never can be. Of Era did he speak much, of Era and the river Nithra, and the falls of the tiny Craw. There would he ever say he once dwelt as a prince, though here we knew him from his birth. Nor was there ever a marble city of Era, nor those who could delight in strange songs, save in the dreams of mine old playmate, Ironon, who is gone." And in the twilight, as the stars came out one by one, and the moon cast on the marsh a radiance like that which a child sees quivering on the floor as he is rocked to sleep at evening, there walked into the lethal quicksands a very old man in tattered purple, crowned with withered vine leaves, and gazing ahead as if upon the golden domes of a fair city where dreams are understood. That night something of youth and beauty died in the elder world.